All right, so this is round 2 with meiosis. The first time I recorded this, I accidentally was on mute. All right, so back at the top, this is the first installment of Unit 4. The goals for this short session are to walk through the main purposes of meiosis and get us set up for further understanding of genetics. I think we've briefly talked about before that we have proteins that are made by our DNA, and so that DNA is transmitted from one generation to the next, and then we see certain traits or certain characteristics that are passed on from generation to generation. What we're seeing here in this diagram is called a karyotype. So it's a picture or a layout of the chromosomes. Each chromosome has a number and they come in pairs. So we would say that we have 23 pairs or 46 total chromosomes being a human. And so in this layout, we can also see that our 23rd pair is a sex chromosome. And so what I'd like you to do, based on what you know so far, if you'll pause the video and make a prediction if this is a male or a female. Now that you've paused the video and made your prediction if this is a male or a female, we can confirm that because there are two X chromosomes here, this is a female. A male would have an X chromosome and then a smaller Y chromosome. While socially, those are the two options that we talk about most of the time, but reality is other things can happen, other variations, 3 X chromosomes, for example, 1 X and then not a second one, and we'll go through that later and what those can result in. So now that we have an idea that meiosis is needed in order to create the correct chromosome number. I think we talked about before that Down syndrome can actually be a result of a meiosis error where we have too many. And so majority of our body cells, your hair cells, your skin cells, your stomach cells have 46 total chromosomes or 23 pairs. But if that's true, then how do sperm cells and egg cells make sure that they have the correct number, which is half of that? And the answer is meiosis. So we know that egg cells and sperm cells each have half of the chromosome number. So if we're talking about humans, this egg cell will have 23 chromosomes, the sperm cell will have another 23, and so that number 23 we can refer to as haploid, or sometimes they use the letter N to designate it. The 23 of the egg and the 23 of the sperm come together through fertilization, and we get one cell that has 46 total chromosomes, and we can say that that's a diploid number 2N, and that just means that we now have 23 pairs. The cells then go through regular mitosis or growth and repair, like we talked about previously. So if you're looking for a big picture, what the heck is mitosis and what are we talking about, this is a great slide to look at, because we're talking about DNA replication still occurring. So in this example, we've got 6 chromosomes, and that's going to occur in interphase. So a lot of these phases will sound familiar to what we talked about in mitosis. But instead of 1 division, we have 2 rounds of cell division. So we go from 6 chromosomes to 3 in meiosis 1, and then in meiosis 2, we go from 2 cells with 3 chromosomes each that are made of an X into 4 cells that have 3 chromosomes that are just made of 1 piece each. And so a big picture here is that genetic variation occurs through independent assortment, crossing over, and both of those occur during meiosis, and then also random fertilization, so which egg cell specifically fuses with which sperm cell, and those are ways that sexual reproduction and meiosis give us genetic variation from one generation to the next. So for example, you may look very different from your parents, or you may look similar, and same thing with your siblings, your brothers and your sisters. You may look very different, or you may look very similar. So that independent assortment is really chromosome roulette. In meiosis 1, those homologous chromosomes line up in the equator, and there are 8 million different possibilities of how those chromosomes can arrange on the left or the right of the cell. So that's completely random in meiosis 1. We also have knowing that there's lots of sperm cells competing to fuse with the one egg cell, and that's completely random as to the genetic content in the egg and that sperm cell. So that gives us variation as well. And then crossing over means that those homologous chromosomes are so close together during meiosis 1 that they can physically exchange parts. And I like the color coding here. It gives us a good visual of what that means. And now we have new chromosomes that have completely different combinations of information compared to the parents. A good example here would be if you had one entirely vanilla ice cream cone, one entirely chocolate ice cream cone, and then you switched the top scoops, and now you have a new variation of that ice cream cone. If you have not watched the Amoeba Sisters meiosis video, I highly encourage you to pause it and watch that video. If you've downloaded the PowerPoint, you can also watch this BioFlex meiosis. I encourage you to watch both. So with sexual reproduction, the second goal of this short clip is to compare and contrast sexual and asexual reproduction. With that, we're talking about egg cells and sperm cells that both contain half of the genetic information and fuse together to form the entire new zygote. With asexual reproduction, and this happens in several different types of species, you only need one parent. There are no egg cells, no sperm cells involved, and the number of chromosomes stay the same throughout the lifespan. So a good example is any of your species that can regenerate parts. So the sea star is a great example. It's going to regrow a limb here. Other types of geckos and lizards that regrow a tail is another good example. And then it has been strawberry season down in Florida for a little while now, but it's up and coming here in North Carolina. All of these offshoots or strawberry runners are a result of asexual reproduction, and they're exactly identical to the parent. So now, if you would like to pause the video and go through the comparison table in determining for each of these, is there one parent or two? Are gametes involved, yes or no? Is fertilization involved, yes or no? How many chromosome sets? So they give you 1N or 2N. I would also add the terms haploid and diploid here. And then if you want to add the chromosome number for humans, that would be great. And then are the offspring genetically identical, yes or no? So go ahead and pause the video and fill out the chart. You've had a chance to fill out the chart. We can see that sexual reproduction needs two parents. Gametes are involved, and if gametes are involved, that means fertilization occurs. Chromosome sets, 2N or diploid. and that number is 46 chromosomes total. For asexual reproduction, that number never varies, and we always only have the one set. And then you can see the genetic offspring results. So the summary of this video is that meiosis gives us genetic variation to produce egg cells and sperm cells for sexual reproduction that give us genetic variation. We also compared and contrasted sexual and asexual reproduction. Thanks so much for tuning in.